This letter was born in a time when my heart was loud and my voice was still learning to stay silent. It was written on a cold night in an ancient winter when loneliness hit harder than usual. I remember it, well, not the exact date, but the feeling. It was as if everything inside me needed to spill out. I needed to speak. I needed to record what no longer fit inside my chest. The person this letter was meant for wasn't just anyone. It was someone who marked my life in a way they might not even realize. Sometimes, those who deeply touch our souls have no idea of the transformation they've caused. It was someone with whom I shared affection, stories, silences. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that, the kind of relationship that doesn't need much to be intense. A look, an exchange of words, a gesture, and there it was, the connection. But over time, life took care of building barriers. Small noises turned into distances. Pride, awkwardness, even the rush of daily life pulled us apart. I felt there was something between us that needed to be said, but I didn't know how. Until one night, I simply wrote. I grabbed paper and pen and let it flow. The words came like a flood. I wasn't thinking, only feeling. I wrote with raw emotion, uncensored. I spoke of what I admired, what hurt me, what was left unresolved. I spoke of longing, but also frustration. I spoke of the hope for a reunion and the pain of having stayed silent so many times. But in the end, I folded the letter. I kept it. And I never sent it. Why? Because writing is easy. What's hard is exposing yourself. It's hard to face the risk of rejection, of judgment, of the other person not understanding what took you so long to say. I was afraid. And deep down I thought, time would bring the perfect opportunity. That one day, by chance, we'd meet, and everything would be explained with a hug, a smile, a long conversation. But that day never came. The letter stayed hidden. And I kept living. Other stories came, other pains, other joys. But whenever I saw it inside that box, alongside portraits, old notes, and forgotten memories, something inside me clenched. The memory of what wasn't said is like a constant echo, subtle but persistent. Maybe you've felt this too. A name that returns when you least expect it. A face that appears in the middle of an old song. A phrase that got stuck and that even now, after so many years, you wish you'd had the courage to say. That's why today I chose to bring this letter to light. Because time, though relentless, is also generous. It teaches us that unspoken words remain alive within us, and that we do have the right to set them free. It doesn't matter if the other person is still here. It doesn't matter if the moment has passed. What matters is acknowledging what was left trapped, so we don't become prisoners of our own silence. Today I realize this letter wasn't just for that person. It was also, maybe even mostly, for me, a confession, a mirror, a plea for peace. And even though it was never delivered, it served its purpose. It revealed to me who I was, what I felt, and what I still needed to face within myself. If you've made it this far, maybe you're remembering your own letter. The one that was never written, or that was tucked away in the silence of time. I invite you to reclaim that memory. Not to hurt yourself, but to set yourself free. Because when we revisit the past with maturity, we find there's still time to tend to the wounds, even the old ones. What stopped me? For a long time I asked myself, why didn't I send that letter? Why, after writing it with such care, such honesty, did I tuck it away at the bottom of a box, like someone hiding a piece of their soul? The answer didn't come right away. It took years for me to understand what truly held me back. At the time, I told myself it wasn't the right moment, that maybe the other person wasn't ready, or maybe I wasn't. I used these excuses so often that they became truths. But deep down it was fear. Pure, simple, paralyzing fear. Fear of being ignored. Fear of not being taken seriously. Fear of opening my heart only to find silence on the other side. When we give ourselves completely, we become vulnerable. And for someone raised to believe feelings are weakness, that crying is a sign of defeat. Admitting what we feel can seem dangerous. And I grew up in a time when we learned to swallow tears, to endure, to resist. Talking about love, regret, longing, that was locked away, buried under layers of pride and silence. And then there was pride. That subtle pride that pretends to protect us, but, in truth, isolates us. If this person wanted to know, they would have asked. If they felt the same, they would have reached out. How many times did I hide behind these thoughts? And while I fed myself these arguments, life passed. Time moved on, and what could have been said, healed, understood, remained untouched. Another thing that stopped me was the feeling of inadequacy. I wondered, is it too late? What if they've moved on, and this letter only reopens old wounds? What if I'm just a nuisance, a memory they'd rather not revisit? I carried this fear so heavily that I forgot to consider something essential. Sometimes our truth needs to be spoken, not for the other person, but for ourselves. Because silence also makes us sick. Because hiding what we feel doesn't erase the pain, it just pushes it deeper, where it grows in silence. I also believe that time would resolve things on its own. That time heals everything. But today, with more wrinkles on my face and more calm in my gaze, I've learned that time doesn't heal what we refuse to face. Time only puts it to sleep. Until a scent, a photo, a song wakes it all up again. And then, that knot we thought was forgotten returns with force, tightening the chest as if it had never left. For many years, I thought I'd moved on. But all it took was opening the box where the letter was kept, or remembering a phrase, a moment, to feel that the wound was still there, quiet, but alive. I avoided it because facing it takes courage. And the truth is, we don't always have courage at the right time. Sometimes it comes too late. Or at least that's what we think. Today I know. What stopped me wasn't the letter itself, nor the person. It was me. It was my fear of being too human. Of feeling too much. Of showing it. It was the old voice inside me saying, "Stay quiet. It's not worth it. Why expose yourself?" That voice stayed with me for a long time. Until I started listening to another. A softer, wiser voice that said, "Speak, send it. Live what needs to be lived before it turns into regret." And you, what's stopping you? What makes you stay silent when everything inside you wants to speak? Maybe it's fear too, or shame, or pride. But is it still worth keeping all that locked inside? Today, revisiting this letter, I see that the biggest mistake wasn't writing it. It was hiding it. Because every unspoken word becomes a weight. And over the years, that weight piles up. We don't notice. Until one day, the body feels it, the heart grows weary, and the soul begs for relief. And sometimes, that relief lies simply in saying what was left unsaid. Content of the letter. I don't know how to begin, so I'll go straight to what I feel. I miss you. And that's a sentence I could never say while looking into your eyes. Maybe because I got used to pretending I didn't feel it. Or maybe because I thought that if I said it, I'd lose something: pride, dignity, the little that was left of me after everything. But now, with the silence of the years and the distance time built between us, I understand. What I truly lost was you. Those were the first lines of the letter. I remember pausing after writing them. I took a deep breath. My hand trembled slightly. It seemed simple, but it wasn't. It's not easy to acknowledge the absence of someone who meant so much, especially when that absence was also our own doing. You were present in so many moments of my life, and yet I felt distant. Sometimes, I'd catch myself watching you, feeling a mix of affection, admiration, and a deep urge to say everything I never did. But the words always died in my throat. It was easier to keep up the act, to pretend everything was fine, than to risk seeming weak or needy. Those words were hard to write, but they might have been the most honest I've ever put on paper. Because it's not just about missing someone. It's about how much we fail to live out of fear, out of pride, out of not knowing how to handle what we feel. I wonder if you knew. If at any point you noticed what I was hiding. Maybe you sensed it, and maybe you stayed silent too. Maybe we hurt each other not for lack of love, but for lack of courage. And that lack became a wall. A barrier that grew between us, one neither of us knew how to tear down. It's strange to read this after so many years. The voice that wrote, this letter belonged to a younger man, but one weighed down by emotional weariness. Someone who had already known loss, who already knew time doesn't wait. And yet, he hesitated. And yet, he chose silence. You know, I wanted you to know you were never unimportant. That even in my silences, in my withdrawals, in my mistakes, there was feeling. There was truth. There was love, awkward, uncertain, but real. If I'd had the courage, I would have told you that outright. And this is where the letter starts to hurt the most. Because the truth is, we think we'll have time. We think one day we'll find the right moment, the perfect chance to say what we feel, but the perfect moment almost never comes. Time passes, and what was urgent turns into longing. What was simple becomes impossible. Today, I write because I need to free you from everything I carried alone. I need you to know, even if you never read these words, that you mattered. That you were loved, even when I didn't know how to show it. That what we had, even if it had no name, was special. As I wrote, I cried, silently. A restrained cry, like someone still resisting complete collapse. And today, rereading it, I realized that cry was more than sadness. It was relief. Because putting into words what's been hidden is a form of healing. This was only the first part of the letter. The beginning of an attempt at redemption, at acknowledgement, at liberation. And maybe, even without a clear recipient, it served its most important purpose, to show me who I was, and who I still can be. Content of the letter, Part 2. I need to ask for your forgiveness. These words came near the end of the letter, but I've carried them in my chest from the start. Because the hardest part wasn't admitting I missed you. The hardest part was recognizing my failures, my oversights, the gestures I should have made but didn't. And that doesn't fade with time. We learn to live with it, but we don't forget. Forgive me for staying silent when you needed to hear me the most. For turning away when your eyes searched for mine. For all the times my silence screamed louder than my love. And for letting pride decide instead of my heart. These apologies didn't come from self-pity. They came from the clarity time brings, that painful awareness that only appears when the dust of years finally settles, and we begin to see everything with more humility, more truth, and with a gentler gaze. Not just for the other person, but for ourselves too. I know I'm not the same person you once knew. Time has changed much in me. I matured the hard way, stumbling over my own mistakes. And if I could go back, maybe I would have listened to you more. Maybe I would have stayed when I walked away. Maybe I would have held on tighter instead of always keeping one foot out. Reading this now fills me with both pain and gratitude. Pain, because there's no going back. And gratitude, because at least I had the chance to write. Because writing saved me from drowning in regret. It was how I found honesty with myself, when it was already too late to be honest with you. I don't expect a reply. I don't want justifications. What was meant to be lived was what could have been avoided, past. But I didn't want to move forward without acknowledging that you mattered. That your presence, even in absence, shaped part of who I became. And here, the letter takes on a calmer tone, almost as if the heart, tired of resisting, finally accepted what life brought and what it took away. It was at this point in the letter that I understood. Sometimes, reconciliation doesn't happen with the other person. It happens within us. The letter that was never sent is also a bridge, not to the one who left, but to the one who stayed. If these words ever reach you, I just want you to know, nothing we lived was in vain. And even if our paths went separate ways, what we felt between us remains true. I carry you with me, not as regret, but as a lesson. And there, with that line, the letter ended. Not with a period, but with ellipses. Because some feelings don't. And they just settle into a quieter corner of the soul. And they become part of who we are. After writing, I folded the letter carefully. Like someone wrapping something fragile. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. But I also couldn't bring myself to send it. It was as if it needed to exist, not to change the past, but to remind me of who I was. And of who I can still be. If I have the courage to say what I feel while there's still time, maybe you, too, have a letter like this one you never sent. A forgiveness you haven't asked for. An absence you've never named. And that's okay. Sometimes writing is already an act of liberation. Sometimes acknowledging the pain is the first step toward peace. And now, after sharing this letter, after opening this chest of emotions that had been locked away for so long, I look at you listening to me. And I can only think one thing. There's still time. Yes, there's still time. Maybe you too have an unwritten letter, a feeling tucked away, an apology stuck in your throat, a longing never confessed, a truth left behind. I know, it hurts. It hurts to look back and see all that could have been. But I tell you, from the depths of my soul, it's possible to turn that pain into peace, because it's not too late to write. It's not too late to feel. It's not too late to try, even if the other person is no longer here, even if time has taken their physical presence. What matters is that you're still here, breathing, feeling, and that means you can still set yourself free. We go through life, believing time heals everything. But time only heals what we have the courage to face. What we avoid, time merely hides, and one day, it comes back. So here's my invitation, my plea, my gift to you who made it to the end of this video. Write. Grab a piece of paper, a pen, or open a document on your computer if you prefer, but write. Write to that person from your past. Write to yourself, to your wounded inner child, to a lost love, to your mother, your father, a friend, a sibling. It doesn't matter. Write what was left unsaid. You don't have to send it. You don't have to show it to anyone. But release that energy inside you, the one taking up space, keeping you from moving forward lighter. Because when we say what we feel, even if only to ourselves, the soul finds relief. And at this stage in life, when we've learned to value what truly matters, few things are as important as peace of mind. So write. Say what was never said. Free what's been trapped. And if you can, share it with me in the comments. What letter do you wish you'd written? What words are you still holding on to today? I'll read everyone with an open heart, and who knows? Maybe together, we can turn regret into liberation. Thank you for staying with me until the end. And remember, there's no age to start over, no wrong time to heal, and it's never, ever too late to say what needs to be said. See you in the next video. Until then, write your letter.